Good afternoon, everyone. I have a French accent, and I'm not a specialist in talent acquisition, so a little bit of cultural barriers to overcome, but I'll do my best. I'm leading the Korn Ferry Institute, which is a research and analytics group for Korn Ferry, for everything that we do. And one of my roles is trying to understand what are new trends, what's next somehow. So I'm going to talk about that today. I will start with maybe some of the trends that we all know, but I need to remind us about them in order to introduce what comes afterwards in what is the implication for talent management and talent acquisition, okay? Just to start, 85% of jobs that will exist in 2030 are not existing today. This is a bold statement, and it's already happening somehow. You see new titles like a chief evangelist officer, or head of cloud services, or manager of social media. Those type of activities did not exist 5, 10, or 20 years ago. My daughter, I have a 23-year-old daughter, she did an internship this summer in a fintech startup company in London, and she was an analyst trying to identify, to make recommendation to buy or sell publicly traded companies based on their carbon dioxide footprint. So this type of job, probably 5 years ago, did not exist. And this is going to happen over and over again. So I'll try to show some of the core underlying forces. Once again, we know all that, but it's important to remind ourselves what they are so that we understand the implications and how we can take advantage of them to perform better in what we are doing. So I'll start with underlying forces, then I'll talk about linked to these forces, 2 disruptions, what are really changing the way work is happening, and then I will explore 4 innovation opportunities for talent acquisition and talent management. So number 1 is a deep force, but really the most important of all, is the digitalization of the economy, the force of computer power, which is really making the difference in everything that we do. To illustrate, this is not new. This has been happening for many years, but we are now in a new phase of computer power. And to illustrate that evolution, I take here the example of machine against human beings. You may remember in 1997, IBM Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov, which at the time was a world champion in chess, in a very publicized event. And at that time, Deep Blue IBM fundamentally used the power of computing. They had a chess game, and for each position, they had the decision tree to identify what are all the alternatives, and then choose the best alternative in order to beat Kasparov. Move forward 20 years. Last year, Google, not IBM anymore, bought a company called DeepMind, and their system, their computer called AlphaGo, beat the best players of the game of Go. So the game of Go is a bigger board with an almost infinite numbers of solutions and opportunities. Therefore, it's much more complex for a computer like Deep Blue, like IBM, or any type of computer to just compute what are all the options. Actually, it's not possible. There are just too many options. So what DeepMind and AlphaGo were able to do, they started to incorporate the notion of machine learning. Therefore, they fed the computer with a number of winning plays, and the computer played and played and played against some of the best players. And then the computer started to play against itself. Therefore, over time, AlphaGo was able to develop almost an intuition, an intelligence of what is the next play in order to be able to win against the best players. This technology of machine learning, we hear a lot about it. It's actually happening, including talent acquisition, talent management, so it's totally relevant to what we are talking about here. What is interesting is that Kasparov was very upset when he lost. He felt that somebody, a real player, was playing behind the machine and tried to contest the fact that the machine won. 20 years later, the players in Korea or China learned through the computer. Therefore, they became better players because they saw the machine do things that no player has ever done. and therefore they became better as a result. So we are in a new phase of machine and people working together to grow and develop. Just a reminder, one of the key drivers of this new economy is computing power, which is cheap and smaller and smaller. So there is somebody called Gordon Moore who established the Moore law about 50 years ago, not that recently, saying that you can put in a silicon the double of computing power every 18 months in the silicon chip. Silicon is start to get a little bit at the limit, but there are new materials and new ways to continue that trend. So it's totally relevant. And you'll see that I will refer to the Moore law several times. As a result, actually, of this Moore law, we have now the emergence of what I call digital workers. Therefore, instead of having a person, you have an equipment, a device, a machine, an algorithm, a robot, wearables, virtual reality. More and more companies are using gamification. Therefore, they do simulations using devices that nobody, no person will be able to ever do like the machine and the algorithm is able to do. So as we move forward, companies are going to ask themselves, for this job, do I hire someone or do I build an algorithm? Okay? The good news is that we still need people to build the algorithm or to build robots. So there are plenty of opportunities. The second force, underlying force, is the emergence of a new business model. The traditional business model is a company that sells a service or sell a product to a client or to a customer base. The new business model is saying you don't need to have a company to have a business. You can have a network. You have a platform, and you integrate buyers and sellers in a way that didn't exist in the past. Why? Because of the Moore law, the cost of transaction is diminishing over and over again. Therefore, you don't need to own under the same structure, the same roof, all the means of production to have a business going. So we have examples of companies doing this. Google or Apple, some of the most successful companies are based on platforms. Google is Android. Apple has the iOS. We know Uber. We know Airbnb. All those companies all those companies are fundamentally based on the platform. Take the example of Netflix. Netflix has a capacity to connect people, the demand for video entertainment, therefore a number of people around the world, with a supply of video production and video entertainment. Therefore, they don't need to own all the production. They can go in Spain, they can go in India, they can go in Hollywood and select the best producers, get the best content. It works, they continue, it doesn't work, they cut it and move to the next one. This provides, therefore, a business model, which is much more profitable and scalable than the traditional asset-based or transaction-based type of businesses. So when you look at Wall Street or the city, the investors, they pay a premium on what they call network orchestrators. They say, because the business model is more valuable, I'm happy to invest more and pay a premium on those companies. When they pay a premium on these companies have more money to invest and to be more successful. Okay? So this is a major change, and we'll see in a few minutes how it is directly impacting talent management, talent acquisition. The third core underlying trend is a major shift in demographics. We have right now 4 segments of demographics operating at the same time in organizations: the boomers, the Generation X, millennials, and Generation Z. But we are observing an exit, a slow exit of boomers, even though so many of them don't want to exit, but this is going to happen anyway. And the emergence of the millennials, which is in terms of demographics, the biggest population. Millennials also start to be in leadership positions. What is interesting is that millennials and Generation Z are already born for this new economy of network and platform that I just talked about. They are born digital, they connect, they are not afraid of connectivity and empowerment that are key drivers of this new economy. Boomers and Generation X kind of understand it, but they don't live it the same way. It's more complicated for them. And one of the big challenges in change management is the mindset of moving from a vertical pyramid organization to a network or platform organization. So those are the major trends. A trend of computing power becoming more sophisticated with deep learning, a trend of network organization and platform organization, the platform economy, and a third trend of demographic change with millennials and Generation Z coming in force into the workplace. What are the disruptions? So I'm going to observe two disruptors in this context. The number one is what we saw a little bit last night at dinner, is a concept of a talent crunch. We did an analysis with a macroeconomic company called Oxford Analytica, and we asked them, look, there are plenty of trends right now happening. You have new technologies, you have people retiring, you have new people coming in, you have aging population, which is another big demographic trend. Look at Japan, for instance. What is the end game there? So they took their model and with a number of macroeconomic assumptions, and they identified what we call a talent crunch, therefore a shortage of about 85 million people in 2030 for skills, the new skills that are relevant for the new economy. 85 million people is the population of Germany. Okay, so it's not a small gap, it's a big gap. And it's a gap in all countries in the world except in India. India will have a surplus, but their surplus will not be enough to feed the need of the rest of the globe workforce. When you translate that into business opportunity, therefore companies may have a new venture, a new idea, something that they want to do, cannot do it. We don't have the right people. We won't have the right people to make it happen. So we estimate over $8.4 trillion of lost business opportunities because of the talent crunch. Therefore, in order to address that crunch, you need to do something different with your employee value proposition, what you do with your people, and we'll talk about that in 1 minute. It is not only in 2030. The talent crunch or the talent shortage is already happening today. Ferry does every year a study with Fortune magazine to identify the world's most admired companies. You have here the latest classification with a perspective from the US, from North America. We took advantage of this survey last year to ask those companies how are they addressing the digital economy from a talent perspective. Very interestingly, those companies that are the most admired company, therefore that don't have any issue getting resumes and talent knocking to their doors, say 44% of them have the talent they need in order to face the digital economy. Only 44, therefore there is a big gap. And 60% claim that it is difficult for them to find the talent that they need. So there is a huge demand for talent already today, for the right talent, which is not being filled in a positive way. Okay? So this is a major trend, a major disruption. Another disruption is what we observe. It's a little bit more subtle, but it's fundamentally a convergence of work and people. So when you look at, you all work with in human resources, we often have on one building or one office, people that deal with the hard stuff. Therefore, job definition, pay, all those hard dimensions of how we manage people. And then you have in another building, talent acquisition, culture, people development, that kind of look at the softer ways. Those two dimensions are coming together. Traditionally, companies used to go about it in the following way. They say, we have a strategy. For that strategy, we need to have those capabilities. For those capabilities, we have those accountabilities. For those accountabilities, there's the job description. Let's find a talent for those jobs. Traditional approach. This doesn't work anymore. This still works for a while, but will not work that much for all the reasons that we saw earlier. First, there is a talent crunch. So if you don't have the right talent, and for this job, you may find it difficult to find those people. Second, things are moving very fast because of computing power and the transparency there is in the marketplace. Therefore, you define today what accountabilities you have, and you expect to have people in that job. You put somebody in that job. Next day, the job changes. You need new accountabilities. We saw that the jobs are changing very fast. So suddenly, you may have either a talent which is not right for the job or a job which is obsolete. So what we see more and more companies doing the opposite. They change the game. They say, with a long-term view or medium-term view, what type of talent do we want? Therefore, what is the profile of talent do we need? Then let's look for those talents, bring them in against this profile, the best we can find, and then they will take care of themselves. Of course, we put them in the job, but the job changes because they are the right talent and what we need. They will adapt the concept of learning agility and therefore continue to perform. Okay? Many of the companies, in the new economies, Google and Salesforce are excellent at that. Therefore, they are looking for the job. Of course, they typically have a project that triggers a need, but they fundamentally look, are those people are going to be the Googlers of the future and make the difference as we go. Okay? An implication of this, still in the redefinition of work, is as you put together the hard work, the job description, and the talent, you start having the possibility of doing something unique and different, which is creating what I call a talent marketplace or talent exchange. So a talent exchange, which are emerging, starting to appear. There is a company called Catalent, which is a talent exchange for equivalent of consulting skills. Last year, they were selling about $30 million. In 1 year, they moved to $100 million of services, being a talent exchange. So exponential growth because there is a need in the marketplace. What does that mean? You have a common definition of work and people, and you can do like a stock exchange. You can match people and opportunities in ways that are much more fluid than they used to be. In the future, talent exchanges will become even more important because of blockchain. Blockchain is going to provide, on top of the internet, which provides connectivity, blockchain is going to provide trust. You will have information on people background or people performance that will be available that will increase the capacity to have people and jobs moving around in a much more fungible way. Okay? So this is a big opportunity. This is going to impact the way you do your work. Therefore, tomorrow, companies may say, should I go with a recruiter? Should I go with a traditional way of getting my talent? Or do I go through a talent exchange and let the system work and make it happen for me? So let's look at, we saw, therefore, the forces, the three forces. We look at two disruptions. One is the talent shortage. The other one is the merger between job and talent in a certain way. Let's look at some of the opportunities that are in front of us to do something with these forces and disruptors. The number one is probably the most important of all my presentation, I believe, is really making sure that talents are becoming assets. So you heard probably somewhere that talent is our most important asset. In practice, this doesn't happen. Talents are being managed as costs. Therefore, it's a backward-looking, trying to infer in the future based on the past, where do we go? And this is probably one of the reasons why, provoking a little bit, CHROs are not at the top of the table. You don't have so many CHROs that become CEOs or board members, which is still a reality today, because they do not really translate talent as a business asset. So here is an example. We took a large e-commerce company, and we looked at the forward-looking value of talent using an NPV, net present value analysis. Therefore, we took finance construct in order to estimate the value of talent. And we saw in that case, it's about $330 billion for a market cap at the end of last year of $570 billion, about 58% of the value of the company. Just by doing the analysis, we could already identify opportunities to increase that value, and therefore ultimately increase the value of the company just because of a forward-looking perspective on talent and what to do with them. To illustrate that what can be done, the number one driver of maximizing, optimizing the value of talent, in this case, is talent segmentation. So it's not so much about low turnover or employee engagement, which is critical, but it's making sure that you know very well what are the segments of talent that contribute to the strategy and that you have the right mix of talent and talent segmentation, like we will do for any product or customer segmentation. We recently produced that book called Talent Wins. One of our senior client partners, Dennis Carey, wrote that book with Ram Sharam, a management guru, and Dominic Barton, the managing director of McKinsey. And they clearly identified that 2 to 5% of any organizations really contribute to the strategy execution and creating the value that you need, which is pretty scary, okay? Do we know who they are? In your organizations, do you know who are those 2%? And this is not the CEO and the senior VPs or senior executives. There are really people that are critical for the value. So if you do an outside-in perspective, to say, what is the value that we want to create, the NPV in the future? The past is gone, just looking at the future. And translate that, therefore, those are the roles of the people that are going to make the difference. Then you have a way to manage your talent in a much more asset-based and value creation way. The type of strategy that you have is of course, talent acquisition. Let's acquire talent that optimize that mix. It's managed turnover. I heard yesterday plenty of people that were being awarded for reducing turnover. Turnover will have to be managed. In some cases, it will have to be accelerated because this segment is not the segment that we need for the strategy. Netflix is brilliant for that. They say that they discovered that one of their best management tools is severance packages. Therefore, they pay people to go because they say, we love this person, they did what they had to do, but not anymore given the new strategy, and they pay them a lot of money so that they can leave. Google does the same, okay? Job rotation, talent development, career promotions, all that is going to be managed in order to optimize your talent mix in addition to talent acquisition. The second innovation that I think that there are many people in this room working on that already, and I heard a lot about it yesterday and today, is the notion of analytics. So I won't go very, very far here. But what we observe, we are moving from descriptive analytics to dashboards. So fundamentally, let's put together a number of information about our talent. Can be talent acquisition, can be talent management, pay, engagement, profiles, etc., number of people, and then make better business decisions. So it's absolutely critical to be to have those dashboards. The next horizon of analytics will be predictive analytics. Very few companies are really doing that. Okay, we may predict a little bit of a turnover or people are going to leave. Okay, but there is much more to be done, as we said, connecting to business value, as I showed earlier. Here is an interesting example of a platform that puts together data, client data, market data, technology, IP, and always-on analytics. It's called the Recruiter Desktop. That is helping streamline and optimize the process of recruitment, putting in the hands of the recruiters all the information they need to make more reliable, faster recruitment decisions. To give another example of talent analytics linked to this, the number one question we get from clients today is, what does an agile digital leader look like? Therefore, we cannot feel that we don't have the right people from a psychometrics perspective, therefore, from the drivers or motives, traits and personalities, competencies, what type of people are we looking at? And then we compare with our current talent and see what is the gap. And then if there's a gap, we need to go and recruit those people. So it's another way. And we can give that answer because of what we saw earlier. There is computing power, there is data, there is science in order to be able to make the difference. The green is the agile leader, and the black is the traditional leader, okay? So yes, and it is only for drivers. Therefore, I took one dimension, what drive people. There are here a few elements, and the digital leader doesn't like too much structure and loves independence. Independence in a way I can't make decisions. Remember what we talked about the millennials and Generation Z? They love empowerment. They are born digital. they are closer to that profile than baby boomers that need to have a structure and need to tell me what I have to do, or I will tell people what they have to do, and then never get fast enough because the market is moving beyond them. Okay, make sense? Beyond the third innovation, potential for innovation, and this is leading edge, is not there yet, but we are here to look at the future, is the application of neuroscience in the context of talent management, talent acquisition. So the Moore law that we saw at the beginning, computing power is more and more, is cheaper and miniaturized, in smaller pieces. You remember that all those movies and labs where you see plenty of electrodes in the head of people, now you can do that with a band or with a cap, a hat, with no insertion of anything. So Moore law is really working in order to be able to capture plenty of signals and map and scan the brains in a way that have never been done before. It's cheaper and actually more effective. So in the context of talent acquisition, what will be a possible strategy? And we are starting working on that with partners. You could identify in an organization what are the high performers and the low performers or average performers. As a sample population, you scan them and get plenty of information, probably against some type of stimulus linked to performance. Then you analyze the data. You get hundreds of thousands of data points. You analyze the data like we saw the Google AlphaGo computer, and understand patterns and infer what performance means in that organization. You get an algorithm, and then you can go and recruit people using the result of the algorithm doing simulation or gamification. You don't need to put the MRI again, that's done. It's done with a sample population. You apply it in all your new candidates with more than psychometrics, with actual data, hard data based on science. And then you look at what I call here synchrony. Therefore, you have a candidate, you test the candidate against the algorithm that you have in the machine learning algorithm, and the brain similarity, if you see a lot of similarity in brain, what they call synchrony, you know that this candidate is closer to the profile that you want. Okay? This is looking forward. Finally, the last innovation, I call it something revolutionary called humanization. It's very interesting. The more we go into data analytics, digitalization, robotization, algorithm, the more we hear about these human features, such as emotional intelligence. We partner a lot with Dan Goldman on emotional intelligence, diversity, inclusion, culture, purpose, personalization. Make sure that your proposition is adapted in terms of pay or career evolution for someone, empowerment, candidate experience, talent experience, mindfulness. All those topics are floating around and more common. However, in most cases, they are being dealt with as almost a compensation or something that HR has to fight for. And the business leaders look at that and say, okay, let's do it, maybe. And not really top of mind. So here, we have the opportunity to make a difference on those topics. Therefore, use the power of data, the power of simulation, everything that we saw earlier, to make those topics core and center to the business. When you don't put them as on the side, we have to make sure that we deal with diversity, but we put it at the center of the way business is being done to make the difference. And my last slide will be an example of that. So I don't know if you are familiar with this company called Chobani. Chobani is a yogurt company. They do yogurt, Greek yogurt, and has been created about 12 years ago by immigrants from Turkey in New York. He was able to buy for $1 million a craft yogurt manufacturing plant that was almost abandoned. And in 10 years, moved Chobani from zero, didn't exist, to the second largest yogurt manufacturer in the United States, overcoming Yoplait, which is a very aggressive, very sophisticated French manufacturer of yogurts, and just behind Danone, who is also another one. How did he do it? 3 strategies: talent, speed, and connectivity. And he didn't put talent as, oh, by the way, we are going to take care of our talent. Talent, by taking care of his talent, he made sure that he was able to, 1, develop an outstanding product. So in those 10 years, they took 18 months to develop the best Greek yogurt you can find in the US. And then speed to go to market. He said, those players are not going to react as fast as we do. Let's go fast and occupy a shelf space at the retailers. And they build connectivity through social media with their customers. Therefore, they establish their brand as there is only one Greek yogurt you can have, it's Chobani's yogurt. Therefore, they use the power of the technology that we saw before, but not as a byproduct, as a core. And all the employees did that. As a result, he decided to give 10% of Chobani's equity to employees, and for some of them to be a lot of money, really a lot of money. So I thought this was a nice example of putting together high tech and high touch in a success case of a company that can pretty quickly achieve very high performance. So any questions or comments? And we looked at 3 forces: computing power, platform economy, and the changing workforce. To measure disruption, a talent crunch, and work redefined with a blurring of work and people. And 4 innovations: talent as an asset, NPV and future value of talent, and predictive value of potential of talent, analytics, science and neuroscience, and humanization.
Decentralization coming in. I mean, do you think the work markets in the future will be more and more decentralized?
Yes. So you will have, so definitely. So, I mean, there is something that comes linked to what I call the talent exchange or talent marketplace. We hear about it as the gig economy, which is not, I'm not sure it is a very good name, but this is happening. This is already happening, and this will happen more and more at any level in an organization. And why? Because people are miserable in their companies, many people, and they want freedom. And millennials and Generation Z are asking for choice. And therefore, those platforms, the capacity to find the best job, wherever it is providing choice to people. Therefore, there is a trend. Technology allows it. So the big blockers of a much more fluid marketplace, in my view, are: 1 is government, need to pay taxes and get money somewhere. So the better you define an organization and you make it difficult for fluidity, the easier is it to capture money. And I do believe it's a major barrier. The other one is more economic, is linked to capitalism. Therefore, the owners want to know what they own and control it in order to get return on their investment. And it's very interesting because you see on so many evolution in the economy was the one place where we haven't seen any real evolution, except a little bit of crowd funding, but it's very marginal, is structure of ownership. This doesn't change for whatever reason. If this changes, then it will be much easier to have an open market. Yes?
Talking about humanization, what is your opinion? What's your opinion on humanization? Should the organization and HR in specific take on this parent-like role and facilitate all this mindfulness, yoga, and private work balance issues? What is your take on that?
So I believe in empowerment. So I believe that the responsibility should be of the employees. In particular, if they want to change jobs and find new opportunities. One of the reasons there is less and less investment in talent development and more investment in talent acquisition is because employers recognize my employees are not going to stay here forever, so why invest in them, okay? Therefore, employees will need to recognize that and say, I need to take care of myself. However, companies do need to have well-equipped talent, people that are able to deliver the best they can do. So I believe that there is more and more the concept of an allowance where you provide money to people and say, or access, you can go to any type of platform where you can learn and use that platform to learn and give time and money to people to develop themselves. And then the organization has to make sure that the core capabilities do you need in your organization to have people that are well balanced? If it is core for your business, you should invest in it. So the organization, in my view, has to be aware, provide the opportunity, including funding the opportunity, but the responsibility is with the individual, in my view.
Thanks for the nice presentation.
Thank you.
On analytics, you had mentioned that not many companies are doing a lot of stuff on predictive analytics.
Yes.
So can you share some more insights on what exactly is happening in the world? How do you see that spanning out? Because, you know, in this kind of a VUCA world, there's so much of unpredictability. So how can predictive analytics be actually used in organizations? Thank you.
So there are different answers there. The first answer, I'm going to provoke a little bit, is many times the companies do not know what question to ask. So people in HR, because they are not enough business driven, don't know what question to ask. The question to ask are fundamentally, they typically ask, are about optimizing the workforce. Lower turnover, more engagement, faster recruitment, etc. The question that where predictive analytics will start to come up will be questions that are not related to talent. Therefore, there are business questions, and then you translate the business question into what does that mean for talent. So it's number one answer. The second answer to your question on the VUCA word and plenty of change is the difference between IBM Deep Blue and AlphaGo. AlphaGo and machine learning and deep learning is about understanding pattern in a VUCA world of Go. So it is totally possible. It's understanding, it's very interesting when the Go players lost against the computer, they were amazed because they said, first, the computer was doing things that no human being has ever done, and it felt like the computer had intuition, okay? Because it learned patterns, and so many patterns that no human being was able to do. So if we have the right questions, for instance, how to innovate, I mean, the question of innovation and speed to market for product innovation, you may ask yourself, how do I translate that into my talent? What talent to acquire, what is the profile, etc. If you ask that question and then try to understand patterns in your organization or others of innovation, using this VUCA word as a way, then you may get some insights that nobody had so far and then be able to get there. So the technology there is, I think, is being willing to get there and to really learn how to do things in a different way. Other questions? Yes?
I have to be honest, when you spoke about making a scan of somebody, I found that a little bit, scary.
I know.
But on the other hand, what was more worry for me is that for a long time, people were cloning in the sense that when they were taking in somebody in the company, it had to look almost like themselves. That has changed over the years. People are more aware that you need a diversity in companies to be having a better output. What takes care that when you make a scan of somebody and you know that, okay, this is the type of person I look by, intelligent or other things, emotional intelligence also, that you're not cloning again on that base?
So it's virgin territory. We are right now, so what happened in our case and why it became important for me, one of our clients from Google called one day and said, Jean-Marc, are you still doing surveys in order to scan candidates and interviews and surveys? And she knew perfectly well the answer. And said, why are you asking? Oh, because why don't you use neuroscience to start to really identify what is best, what are the best talents? And she put me in touch with UCLA, and there is an organization called Precog there that came and said, now we can do cheap scanning, we can give data and provide you with this insight. The same week, I had the University of Pennsylvania, Wharton, and the Wharton Neuroscience Initiative coming to my office, making exactly the same pitch. Okay? So the technology is there. And it was pretty amazing. And then the week after, by coincidence, a private equity firm came and saying we have a company in Florida which is also doing the same thing. So this is going to happen. We want it or not, it's going to happen. In order to move forward, the first thing that we did is talk to lawyers. Therefore, how can we ensure privacy, protection of people, even in the testing phase? Therefore, not even the rollout, but those people, the few people that we are going to, how do we work with that? So we are in that process. There are plenty of ethical issues. There are plenty of knowledge issues. I don't know how to solve it, but we are working on it, and I'm sure we will find solutions.
Hi, I have a question from the other point of view, from the point of view of the candidates. Are you also looking at how candidates are using this kind of technology? Because as you mentioned, Moore's laws, we have very powerful phones and other things at our disposal. So are you also looking at how candidates are actually using the same tools as we?
Definitely. So we have a small startup within Korn Ferry called KF Advance, which focus, as Korn Ferry is a big search and recruitment company. So every day, and we work for companies, every day we get talents that say, oh, because I know that you guys are looking for people to place, I'm a candidate, can you help me? So finally we said, okay, let's do something for the individual, as you are asking. So we created this unit called KF Advance, which is exponential growth, and helping people in transition fundamentally. And one thing that people need in transition is know themselves, doing an assessment, know where they are in their careers, they get some coaching, mentoring, etc. But then get ready to land their next job. So the technology, some of the technology that we use for companies, we are putting as a disposal of individuals. To give a concrete example, we now have a simple app using AI, machine learning, and people train using the app. They film themselves, they took the little camera, they film themselves doing an interview. So introduce yourself in 1 minute. As they do that, they get feedback live from 3 AI systems on their posture. Actually, some companies are testing the same thing on the other side, but on their posture, on the type of word they use, and the content of their responses. And they can improve. And then when they go to the other computer, the company's computer, they may be better prepared, I don't know. But this is already happening. Actually, this is a very interesting point. And we see that also in AI linked to, I will finish now. In AI linked to recruitment, most companies, Korn Ferry, CLOs, and others, use some type of AI system in order to help match a talent with an opportunity. You may have a battle of which AI is better, okay? And I think it's not easy to say. Ultimately, we are starting now to get back to, in order to make the difference, you need to have better relationship, understand your client needs, define the request better. Therefore, more traditional management once AI becomes a commodity.